For me, mentorship sort of allowed me to think about possibilities without the risk of failure. I didn't have lawyers in my immediate family. So my mother and father, I actually attended the same high school my mother and father had gone to, but they did not go into professions. So I didn't have cousins or anyone like that around to talk to. I was fortunate that I met a few lawyer friends, and they became mentor-like friends to me and continued to coach me, give me practical advice, long-term advice. And so it made me, to some extent, fearless in terms of what I saw as possibilities. And I think that's the value of having a mentor around, is to get you over any anxieties or any fears that you may have. The first thing I would say is make no assumptions in terms of you have to look like the mentee, you have to speak like the mentee, you have to understand the cultural norms of the mentee. That young people are really receptive to opening up and receiving good, solid advice if they believe that the advice is well intended, that it's not patronizing, and that it comes genuinely from the heart. And I always tell people, both mentees and mentors, you have to get out your comfort zone. In some of the work I do in the city, we couple communities that are generally not used to being around one another geographically, and we partner them to explore new activity like golf, for example. Maybe an inner city kid had not golfed before. So my advice is to dispel with the discomfort of reaching out to anyone, and you'd be amazingly surprised on how fruitful the relationship could be. So, I don't assume everyone is as confident and as ambitious or make any assumptions about that. For me, I was always very curious, a curious person, but we always put limitations on ourselves. And so I had a few mentor friends that would always say the first thing in terms of moving forward is to have no fear of failure. So running for office, for example, the challenge with running for office is you could lose. And if you lose and you have your friends that helped you and walked in parades and donated to your campaign, you let everybody down. So it's a fear of failure, and no one likes to fail. So technology, for example, I had gone into technology, and so that could be a fairly intimidating industry if you didn't study technology all of your life. Telecommunications was the same way. So you have to sort of be an engineer for one day, or a software or code developer, or something like that. You try to understand what's happening there. That could be somewhat intimidating when you're dealing with MIT scholars around you and thinking, well, wait a minute here, I don't quite have that background. So you get over those anxieties and you dig in deeply to see what the issues are. And so mentors, for me, have allowed me to say, it's okay, don't, to eliminate that sense of failure and have that confidence to, if you stumble, you just get up and you keep moving along. And have fun along the process. I will forget one advice a mentor lawyer friend of mine said. If you notice today, I have a white shirt on, and coming out of law school, I like colorful shirts, man. I grew up in an era where you wore those colorful shirts, and she said, which is another issue, by the way, a good mentor doesn't have to be of the same gender. She said, well, when you go to interviews, I want you to always wear a white shirt. And I said, well, why? I like these green shirts. And she demonstrated how you want to look like the person that's about to hire you. And then she talked about some other grooming issues in terms of suit colors and things like that. So practical advice that paid off as well. I figured most of the career things that I have either done or will do have probably been tried before. So before I created my firm with several other partners, I would talk to other people, find out how they did, what their governance model was like, how their infrastructure was right, like how their billing and collection systems would work. So again, many folks that were somewhat older than me that had gone through these experiences were provided good, sound advice for me. Again, this was something that no one in my family or even immediate peer group had done to the scale that I wanted to do it. In all due respect to solar practitioners, I figured that there were several solar practitioners, but for me to approach several people that were already practicing either at firms or with smaller firms, larger firms, and to pull them together to try to do something, I wanted to do it right. And again, I had friends who I could call on and mentors I can call on to help me to learn from the mistakes they might have made when they were trying to do a similar thing. You know, adversity is inescapable to a large extent, and it could be a health challenge, a financial challenge, an adverse ruling from a judge. It could just be people coming at you and criticizing you when you're working in good faith. It could be a bad politics at a law firm working against you when you're trying to do the right thing. There's all kinds of adversity. And my advice for mentors are how you deal with that really, quite frankly, measures your character. I was talking to some youth about stealing. And I said, you know, it's so easy not to steal when your pockets are filled with money. They're just bulging, right? It's easy not to steal. I said, but when you have nothing and you've lost your job, you're functionally bankrupt, and then you have a choice to make as to what kind of person you will be. Well, that's your character test. When you look in the mirror, who are you? What are you looking at? Who are you looking at? And I think what a mentor should do is to say, you know, let's embrace adversity and let's turn it into to something strong. And I deal with that all day long when I'm in politics. I'm having to deal with some adverse issues. It's very rewarding both for the mentor and the mentee. That I believe a mentor gets as much out of the relationship as the mentee. Very rewarding. You continue to learn. I hope to continue to learn while I'm in my 80s or 90s from other people. And I don't say that in a way that, I only say that to say that when I talk to younger people, it still helps me to understand their perspective. It helps me adjust how I approach things. It's a very rewarding experience. Yes. You know, the beauty of mentoring a person is teaching them how to fish as opposed to just giving them fish. And I have a son, my middle son, who has legal aspirations, and for the right reasons. I mean, I think he sort of likes the notion that he can actually argue a case and argue successfully and create some kind of justice at the end of his argument, that he was right because he chose the right words, had the right argument, had the right legal precedent, that there's something very rewarding about that. Now, when you look at underrepresented groups, perhaps they don't have the strongest advocates. You look in local politics, for example, Jeff, that those who are getting a lot of the attention, who actually gets major things accomplished, such as in our environmental community and major parts of our labor community, they have the best advocates. Some groups do not have the strongest advocates. And so the ability to change has a lot to do with your ability to speak and to motivate, to create a vision. It's through your words. And then when you couple that with the ability to do research as to what works in other cities or in other countries, well, now you have a persuasive argument. That gets at the core of change. We have a president elected, I think, in this country right now because he created the best vision for change only through his words. So that gets at the heart of how mentors could actually help underrepresented people, to give them the tools to advocate for themselves. Now all boats rise when we have this kind of effective advocacy. That's a good question. I say I faced a lot of obstacles because I made it through there. Financially, you know, law schools are expensive, and so you have to have some kind of resources around you. I was very fortunate. I had a mother and father that could help out, and because I played football in college, I had an NCAA 2A scholarship. But always having to pay our rent and food was always an issue. So I guess the challenges were more practical. You know, I cracked the joke to some friends. I think I lived with 5 guys when I was in law school. You know, we just sliced that rent up 5 times. And I always tell younger lawyers and younger high school students and college students that the key, I think, in becoming very successful is sort of how long can you live while you're broke. In other words, you know, we were broke in high school and college and law school. We didn't have a lot of money, but that was okay. We were investing in ourselves. And a lot of people, I had one roommate, for example, he just wanted to go out there and make the quick bucks, so he quit school. So if you could be a little patient and keep investing in yourselves. But I just remember that was sort of a distraction. And then the distractions that come with youth, you know, whether it's going to a basketball game or going to a party or doing whatever young folks like to do. It was my experience that those that stayed focused always were somewhat more successful. But I must say that I was very fortunate that the obstacles, I guess, that many would have, I found a way to overcome them. Does continue to be my challenge. You know, your health should be one of your key values. And when I look at my lack of exercise on times or just downtime, I have to almost fight for that. And that becomes a situation where your values are completely out of sync with what your actions are. And so I have to consciously look at through a weekly schedule or a monthly schedule. I have to carve out that which means a lot to me. My family, for example, my children, my wife. Funny, as we're taping this on June 12th today is my wife's birthday. And so I had a few engagements that I had to do today, but I said, you know, nothing's more important than my wife's birthday. So I passed on a few speaking events this evening because my priorities have to be in sync with my actual schedule. But it takes practice and conscious intent. Otherwise, you just get way out of whack. And quite honestly, you don't learn that in law school. I don't think you learn that at some point unless you go to some kind of seminar in terms of time management. And I did go to several time management courses to better understand the balance that one has to achieve. You know, with email and text messaging and Facebook and Twitter and every social media tool out there and an old-fashioned telephone, you know, you get bombarded with communications. So managing that becomes the art, and those that will master that art will be the most successful. I think the beauty of mentoring is you realize how, you know, the human sort of frail condition. You see someone that's very confident and to inspire a young person to say, well, hey, I have insecurities as well. It's very empowering for that person. And so you're missing so much. You're missing so much if you don't participate in this. And it's fun. It's a lot of fun to be able to help other people. So my expectation of mentee number one probably is to assume positive intent, to assume that uh, that the person helping you is doing it for the genuine purpose of trying to help, number one. I guess number two is you have to try, you have to put your skin in the game. You have to put energy behind whatever it is, whatever the message is that you should do. In other words, the path to success, if it were that easy, everyone would be successful, right? So a lot of the theory only becomes real when you're actually putting some muscle behind it. I heard a quote the other day. The person said that if the mountain was smooth, nobody could climb it. So you're going to have those bumps on the mountain, and so that's what the mentor-mentee relationship is about, is navigating through the juggle of work in life, in life challenges and health challenges and financial challenges. There are so many people that will be quick to say you can't do something. I mean, you get that all the time. So how do you overcome that negative talk with self-talk? Quite frankly, how can you get exposed to different things? In my life, I grew up in the Central District in Seattle in the 60s, and so I had somewhat limited exposure in terms of what was out there. I didn't know about technology or software development or telecommunications. I didn't know about mergers and acquisitions or corporate law. That wasn't the things that were talked about in my household. And so through friends in law school and beyond law school, people started telling me, you know, there's a whole world out there that you just didn't know about. And conversely, in those worlds, a lot of those people didn't know the beauty of ethnic food or speaking in a diverse language or the immigrant refugee communities and the richness of another part of culture. So in my life, I like exploring that whole gamut of possibilities out there. And I think that's what the mentor-mentee relationship sort of brings. I think the three most important things I've learned is, number one, um, the, the ability to get over fear that both the successful mentoring relationship that I've had and that I've provided for a mentee, I think, have allowed the doors to be open when people are fear-based. And that is like unlocking unlimited power. I suppose the second one is, the lesson is that again, a good mentoring relationship transcends gender, age, race, religion. Then when I look at the people who've helped me in my life, they're all over the map, different races, different sexes, kind people. And so I don't make any suppositions about what a person has to be. I suppose the third important aspect of it is it doesn't take a lot of time or money You know, the most important learning moments are just a little coffee conversation with someone, not the life and death experiences. It could just be a simple call to someone, a simple letter to a person. It could be an email. It's light lifting, and if you do that with some level of consistency, you realize that lives are changed. I'll share a few personal experiences. I'll talk about Judge Richard Jones, who's now on the federal bench, and I'll talk about Judge Leroy McCullough, who's on the Superior Court bench. Judge Leroy McCullough was a counselor of mine when I was in day camp as a youth. He was a big brother to me back then. We were talking about camping and how to start a fire and those kinds of things to my brother and I. And when he became a lawyer and he became a judge, he's one of the few people I knew. I mean, I knew him when he was in college, that I watched his career. And of course, when he started to run for judge, many of us licked envelopes and did what was necessary to help him get elected. And I've watched him give back to the community, and I think I'm a result of his efforts. Judge Charles Johnson and Judge Donald Haley were two African-American judges, both of whom mentored me and who I worked for while I was in law school. They continue to be a friend to me. The relationships, they are lifelong when they really work. Earlier I talked about a person who was my baseball coach when I was 9 years old. I'm 53 now. And we had coffee last week, and the relationship, the things he taught me as a child are still as strong now as they were when I was a child. So I'm a walking result of these successful relationships, and I will tell you that that's the beauty of the mentoring relationships. They are truly sustainable. They stay with you, and you almost have a duty to give it back to other people. These are just light touches. They add up to a very strong grip, positive grip in the long run. And so I'd say you're really missing the boat if you don't have these kinds of relationships around you.